Hello everyone, this is part 37 of What If Naruto and Hinata trained together and a spark happened, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. You think some ghostly genjutsu is gonna stop me? Naruto shouted angrily, and then placed his hands together and shouted, "Release." The solidifying figures did not vanish, and Sasuke's stolen face split in a grin. This is no mere mental projection. Orochimaru continued to use his own voice. This kinjutsu has existed since before the modern ninja age. The Sage of the Six Paths updated it to its current form, but then sealed it away for some reason. The Five Souls Underworld connection touches your soul, and then draws back from the afterlife the five strongest ninja you killed, the Renegade Sannin explained. Once here, they are given solid forms, and cannot be destroyed while you still live. Of course, I don't want you dead, so once they have inflicted enough damage, I will send them back with the counter jutsu. I must admit, I am anxious to see who appears. Orochimaru smirked more broadly. We can find out if you really were able to kill Madara Uchiha. The first soul, the second in from Naruto's left, began to coalesce. The mist, so deep a blue that it was nearly black, lightened in some areas and darkened in most. It appeared solid, yet transparent at the same time, and its colors were washed out. The soul was tall, with stringy brown hair trailing just past his shoulders. His beady blue eyes, placed close to his wide nose, locked on the blonde Tokujo with a look of intense hatred. His densely muscled body was covered by heavy, black armor. "Doto," Naruto growled. Naruto Uzumaki, the deceased usurper, matched the teen's angry tone. He tensed, but did not move as the spirit in the middle began to take shape. The second specter was even taller than the first, with a short crop of black hair sticking out from under the hidden mist headband tied over his forehead. He had deep brown eyes, but his nose and mouth were covered by white strips of linen. He wore a sleeveless back shirt, gray trousers, and had fingerless gray gloves that extended almost to his elbows. Even if Uzumaki had not recognized him on sight, he would have known him by the Kubakiri Hoko, a phantom reflection of the slab of steel sharpened into a sword, hung across the spirit's back. It did not remain there for long. The ghost drew the weapon, and angled it towards Naruto. "Zabuza," Naruto mumbled, surprised. But as he remembered the broken sword, he could have guessed who the next soul would be. Forming on the other side of Zabuza, Haku looked the same as he had in life. He had soft brown eyes, and long hair, nearly black in color. His facial features were more fitting of a girl than a young man, and he barely reached mid-chest on his partner. He still wore the falsified Mist Hunter uniform, and as when he fought Naruto and Sasuke, wore a mist headband instead of the white and red mask. Though both Doto and Zabuza looked partially drained of their color, the effect was more pronounced on the pale young man, and Naruto thought he looked more translucent than the other two. Haku lifted his hand, and the water vapor in the air collected and froze into 9 perfect ice kunai, which continued to float in the air before him. The last two figures did not wait until they were fully formed to spring forwards. Naruto tensed to receive their attacks, but they stopped just before him, and turned to face the other phantoms. The woman finished appearing first. She had long cyan hair, and clear, bright green eyes. Her shozaku was pure white, with short sleeves and an even shorter dress, showing off her strong, toned limbs, while hiding the noteworthy curves of her B and hips. She wore a pair of B shorts underneath. She wasn't afraid to show a little leg, but did not want to flash her underwear every time she executed a high kick. Naruto was quite familiar with the uniform. The last of the physical versions hung under a garment bag in his closet. "Back off, jerks," Yukihana Uzumaki ordered loudly. She triggered the first seal on her belt, and her longsword appeared in her hand. "Mom," Naruto croaked quietly, shivering anxiously. She glanced back at him with a grin that was both sad and happy. Then she turned her attention to the last shade. He was about the same height as Naruto and Doto, and somewhat between them in terms of musculature. His hair was a darker shade of blonde than Naruto's and was the same spiky style on top, but longer on the sides and in the back. His blue eyes were also slightly darker than the young man he was guarding. He wore blue pants and a shirt, with a Jonin vest over the top. He had an additional layer of dark gray cloth over his forearms. And most recognizable was his white cloak with a pattern of flames along the bottom. The fourth, Naruto's reaction to his mother's soul was washed away by the surprise of seeing the man who had sealed the fox demon within him. We won't let you lay one finger on our son, Minato Namikaze confirmed, slipping into the stance of the tiger and heron. Son. Naruto's jaw dropped, and Zabuza barked a laugh. Orochimaru drew back, watching the situation closely. Of those 5, Naruto only directly killed Doto, the serpent considered, and 2 of them are his allies. Could I have performed the technique wrong? No, that is unlikely. But the translation of the jutsu's effect may have been incorrect, or the description may have been damaged. Instead of the souls he killed, it appears to be the souls connected to him by the deaths. Not just those he killed, but also those who died for him. That could be why this technique was sealed, it is too random to be useful. Still, this merits watching. For now. That doesn't matter, Doto had the same idea as Orochimaru, it is still 3-on-3, and one of you is hopelessly mortal. And we will remain as long as the punk does. He stepped towards Uzumaki, started signing, and added, now you will learn the price of regicide. But before her could complete his jutsu, Zabuza raised his sword into Doto's path. The deceased daimyo froze, and looked at the other phantom. Zabuza shifted his glare from Naruto to Doto. Of course, Doto agreed, trying to hide his nervousness. If the legendary swordsman of the mist claims the boy as his prey, then I will content myself with keeping his mother occupied. Zabuza glanced over at his apprentice, and Haku nodded. The next instant the Kubikiri Hoko swept out, and Doto had to drop to avoid being beheaded. At the same time Haku whirled around and launched all 9 of his frozen daggers at Sasuke's body. What the hell? The snow daimyo cursed. Hopping back to avoid the second blow, Doto began to sign again. Even with the Sharingan, Orochimaru was unable to fully dodge all 9 of Haku's remote-controlled kunai, and one of the icy daggers buried itself in Sasuke's right bicep. I owe Naruto a debt, the demon of the hidden mist explained, for carving away my stupidity. And even more now for giving me a chance to see Haku, if indirectly. As he swept down his massive blade again, he glanced backwards, though if I had known he was the spawn of the golden flash of the hidden leaf, I probably would have fought him myself after our first little skirmish. That, or cancelled the contract. Orochimaru started to sign the reversal jutsu, but Haku hit him with a barrage of needles, forcing the Sannin to stop his hand seals to deflect the attack. Let's leave it to them, for now, Minato suggested to his lover. Yukihana nodded, and they both turned to face their child. You are my father. Naruto looked the 4th Hokage up and down. Seeing the man in the flesh, so to speak, and hearing of their connection, the teen finally noticed the similarities. Yes, Naruto, I am your father, Minato smiled proudly. Naruto, however, did not smile. He stomped over and grabbed the Hokage's cloak, lifting him into the air. Both of his parents looked surprised, both by his reaction and by his strength. You jerk, the Tokujo growled, you made my life miserable by sealing that damn fox in me. How could you do that to your own son? I didn't have a choice, Minato said sadly. Naruto Uzumaki. Yukihana barked, you let your father go right now, or so help me. Naruto did not simply release Minato, but pushed him away. The young man turned his back on him, so they could not see his expression. Sadness, anger, and also joy warred on the teen's face, but he was not ready to let the matter go just yet. What do you mean, you didn't have a choice? He demanded as firmly as he could, you were the Hokage, damn it. You could have ordered someone else to be the Jinchuriki. It was within my power, the former leader of the Konohagakure admitted, then added more firmly, but I had the responsibility to do the right thing. The right thing. Naruto snarled slightly. I have heard that you want to be Hokage, Naruto, Minato lectured, but if you just want the position for power and respect, you should give up now, because you'll never be Hokage. Naruto looked at his father again, surprised and hurt. Part of being a leader is making the hard choices, Yukihana explained gently. That applies to every Jonin, but especially for the Hokage, the 4th agreed, there might be times when you will have to send friends or family on what amounts to a suicide mission, because they have the best chance to get the job done. No matter your personal preference. He sighed, Before continuing, you were the best choice to be the Jinchuriki of Nine Tails, because of your high levels of chakra, and your elemental affinities. Also, as an infant there was a better chance you would keep your sanity. You had no mind or temptations for the demon to whisper to, so you just blocked her out, until you were told she was there. As Hokage, I could not ask someone else to sacrifice one of their children, when my own was the best, safest option. And it wasn't supposed to be like this, Minato admitted, sad but with an undercurrent of accusation. You were not supposed to grow up alone. You were supposed to have your mother. You sent me out to distribute the kunai with the seals, Yukihana shot back. I also ordered you not to be a hero, Minato rumbled. So should I have left my friends to die? Who would have helped me give out the kunai? No, he shook his head, but you should have gone in for medical treatment. Then who would have completed the seal? She growled at him, sounding suspiciously like her son. Then her voice became soft and she added sadly, and if you had told me you were going to offer yourself to the Reaper, to divide the Kyuubi's chakra, to protect Naruto from the creature's mind, I might have tried harder to stay alive. Or you might have tried to stop me, he grinned slightly. Maybe, she agreed sheepishly. Naruto interjected, I was the one yelling at you guys. But he smiled as he said it. Doto frowned as he dodged again. Zabuza's attacks didn't injure his phantom body, but nevertheless they hurt like hell and knocked him away from the little family reunion. The snow ninja turned daimyo was limited in his options. Despite his appearance, his outfit lacked the power of his real chakra armor. And most of his jutsu required a supply of snow or ice to use properly. And though he knew a handful of water jutsu, using them against the demon of the hidden mist was foolish at best. Doto saw his opening. He ducked past the vertically descending blade, and drove his elbow into Zabuza's stomach, and then raised his fist into the swordsman's chin. The mist renegade stumbled back, and the snow ninja was torn between trying to attack Naruto, and pressing his advantage on Zabuza. But his hesitation was too much, and Zabuza drove the heavy pommel of the giant cleaver into a very sensitive part of Doto's anatomy. Dead or not, it was all the snow ruler could do to keep from screaming and curling into a little ball. Unlike his only ally in this fight, Orochimaru was still living. So unlike Doto, who could simply trade blows with Zabuza, he had to watch out for Haku. He tried to dredge up Sasuke's memories of fighting the boy, but Uchiha did his best to block the serpent's mind. You aren't fighting Naruto right now, the imprisoned soul noted darkly, hiding his memories as deeply as he could. Orochimaru hopped back, trying again to mold his chakra into the shape that would banish the souls he had conjured. He hit a patch of ice created by Haku. Had it been normal ice, it would not have done anything to the master shinobi. But Haku's Kekkei Genkai ice repelled the gripping chakra emerging from the Sanin's feet, and he sent Sasuke's body into an exaggerated backflip to avoid ending up on his butt. The move forced him to place his hands on the ground, again ending the attempted banishment. As he returned to being upright, he bit into his thumb, and quickly dabbed 2 small spots of blood on his left forearm, just below the elbow. The first snake appeared wrapped around his right arm, and quickly disgorged Kusanagi into his waiting palm, before vanishing. The second serpent appeared next to the ice. The boa was over 14 feet long, and over a foot in diameter. Hold him, Orochimaru ordered the familiar, and the constrictor tensed up to spring at Haku. The teen split has next set of ice needles between the snake and the human, but the legendary blade flicked out, carving through them all. As the serpent hit Haku, Orochimaru set aside the chokuto, and started signing again. Why all the secrecy? Naruto asked his parents, why not tell everyone the fourth was my dad? Or at least tell me. I don't know, Minato said evasively, your mother had her reasons for wanting to keep our relationship private, but that doesn't explain why no one told you. Other people know. Naruto asked, who? The only ones who knew, Yukihana frowned at her paramour, were Sarutobi, Jiraiya, and Tsunade-sensei. We don't know if they told anyone else. You don't know. The teen looked confused, why not? The dead don't look down on the living, Yukihana said, we only know what other souls who died later are willing to share. Sarutobi-sama and I have never discussed the matter, Minato shivered slightly, there isn't much conversation where we are. Yukihana's expression turned sad, and she grabbed her beloved's hand. Naruto frowned as he watched the display. Aren't you two together? The couple exchanged glances, and a tear formed in the Kunoichi's spectral eye. No, Minato's voice was somewhat hollow. We are consigned to different parts of the afterlife. What does that mean? Naruto demanded, then he pointed at his mother. You said he gave himself to the Reaper. Is that why? 5 souls rescindment. Orochimaru's voice carried past them, and the forms of 5 souls began to lose their color. The Sannin gestured, and the snake trying unsuccessfully to crush Haku eased its grip. Sorry, kid, Zabuza said, it looks like that's all the time we can buy you. No. Naruto's eyes grew wet, you can't go. I have so many other questions. We don't really have a choice, his mother chided sadly. Naruto, what I said before. Minato's hair was almost white as death called them back. I think you can be Hokage. I'm very proud of you. We both love you, kiddo. Yukihana tried to hug her son, but her arms passed right through him, and we both wish we could have done it a different way, could have been there. And then the 5 souls were gone. Orochimaru pulled an ice kunai out of Sasuke's thigh, and tossed it away, trying to control his breathing. That was a spectacular waste of time and chakra, the body thief commented. Are you kidding? Naruto wiped his eyes with a huge grin. So far this has been one of the 5 best days of my life. Now if you just give back Sasuke, it might make top 3. I have a better idea, he countered darkly, the red of the Sharingan seeming to pulse with anger. Orochimaru caught up the blood from his wounded leg, and smeared a large stripe down his left forearm. Summoning jutsu, he intoned. A giant cloud of smoke billowed out, leaving in its wake a 350-foot-long snake. The reptile was purple with black bands, and had 4 large horns. What do you want? Manda grumbled. Now, the Sharingan locked onto the serpent, and Manda quickly looked away from Orochimaru's eyes. What happened to our little discussion about respect? How may I serve you, Orochimaru-sama? Manda restated, with undercurrents of fear and rage in his voice. Sasuke's face showed an evil grin. Crush Naruto Uzumaki within an inch of his life, the renegade Sannin ordered, but do not kill him, he is too valuable of a subject. And in thanks, I might just give you Sakura Haruno. The snake's green eyes narrowed slightly. The peace offering was a trifle compared to what he would have demanded before being introduced to the Tsukuyomi, but Manda was not about to turn it down. The enormous reptile turned his attention to the young human. You better not forward my call this time, Chief, Naruto mumbled under his breath. He slammed his hand into the ground, shouting, summoning jutsu. Naruto disappeared in the mist, but was lifted out seconds later, atop the head of Gamabunta. It looks like we meet again, the leader of the Toad Ninja clan grunted, not even bothering to ask why he had been summoned. Sakura planted her foot on the elbow of Kidomaru's severed limb, not only to keep the 2 sound warriors from retrieving it, but also checking to see if the spider-like shinobi could still feel it. His face betrayed no reaction to her action. Instead, both Jirobo and Kidomaru were hanging back warily. She knew they were concerned about her weapon, but she was still surprised they were not attacking. The medic wondered if they knew a way her axe could end them. Then she heard a cry, and realized what was happening. Tayuya, still rendered mute by Soul's jutsu, had finally caught up with the female squirrel. Lune tried to protect his sister, but the flute player struck the albino rodent a second time with her instrument, and the vacuum technique ended. Sakura deduced that the undead men were waiting for their teammate to finish the summoned animals and rejoin them. Haruno remembered hearing that ninja squirrels were scouts and trackers, not fighters. Though Soul's rage had given them momentum, it was now becoming apparent that even together, the 2 rodents were not a match for the sound ninja. The Jonin swung her axe down, almost casually, cutting Kidomaru's arm in half at the elbow. She had 2 reasons for the action, and both paid off as she hoped. Angry and worried, Kidomaru resumed his attack on her. He quickly spit 4 spikes at her and then nudged Jirobo forward. She stopped the silk weapons easily, and watched the 2 parts of the severed appendage. Even though they were touching, the upper and lower arms did not reconnect. I thought so, Sakura suppressed her smile, the pieces can't repair themselves. So they must have some sort of core that enables the regeneration. It might even be the source of the jutsu that animates them. Either way, if I can split off the core, I can beat them. She watched them carefully, wishing she had the Byakugan. It is probably the heart or the brain. Either way, I need to get him to attack. She sliced through another lasso expectorated at her, and then reached down and picked up the lower part of Kidomaru's arm, placing her foot on the upper part again. She lodged the head of her axe in the ground, so she could retrieve it quickly when they reacted. Then she took a pitcher's stance, and threw the limb well over their head, at the Shishinjin. Neither of the sound ninjas reacted like she expected, they just watched passively as the limb sailed past them. Safe in his tent of deadly fire, Akon shifted his hand slightly, and a small oval opened in the barrier. The partial arm sailed through the opening and landed outside. Kidomaru smirked at her. What, you thought you could destroy me with the Shishinjin? He mocked. Sakura shook her head, unconcerned. Not really, she agreed, but now if you want your other hand back, you'll need to go get it. And if you do, I'll use the opening to escape. And leave your little rodent friends behind. Jirobo shook his head, thinking he was calling her bluff. As soon as I'm out, Hinata can send them back, the medic countered. I'm sure she's still watching what's going on in here. And out there, too. In fact, she caught up the other piece of Kidomaru's arm, and hurtled it sideways towards the wall between her and her female teammate. Once again, Akon opened a small hole in the barrier. But Sakan was too wrapped up in staring at the two-tails cat in morbid curiosity. The upper part of Kidomaru's middle left limb hit the dominant twin's Shishinjin, and began to burn in crimson flames. No! The dismembered shinobi shouted, as the altered flesh vanished in cloud of ash. He turned to face Sakura again, enraged. But he faltered at her triumphant look. Well, Tsunade student almost purred, it looks like there is something those bodies can't recover from. Grabbing her axe and lifting it high, Sakura charged towards them. That tasted disgusting. Nieni finished licking her teeth clean, nothing like a garter snake. Sorry, Hinata did not take her eyes off Kabuto as she sent the thought to the cat, but thank you. It was kind of fun, the demon deflected, maybe I'll look for snakes at the Uchiha estate. Can you turn me back now? Hinata nodded, and reversed the chakra flow in the amulet, returning the two tails to her house cat size. Kabuto frowned, but could not keep the relief from his face. But it was quickly replaced by suspicion. Why did you do that? He asked carefully, considering the new options open to him. Hinata tried to think of a reasonable excuse, but could not think of anything she felt would convince the canny renegade. So she settled for remaining silent, and calm. She dropped back into the gentle fist stance, and waited for him to make his move. She is faster than me, he thought, and has counted every move I've made. I probably have the edge in strength, but that is not my fighting style. If I can just keep her hands away from me long enough, I can use my chakra scalpels to immobilize her. Or I could just destroy her organs and convince Orochimaru it was the only choice. The snake will have to settle for examining her eyes. I only need to lengthen my scalpels and exploit my greater reach. I just have to make sure I don't let her disrupt my chakra network first. I will only have one shot at this. He stepped forward, forming 3 of the energy raises in each hand. He kept the medical jutsu at its standard length, knowing that she could see the normally transparent blades. He stabbed shallowly at Hinata, but jerked his hand back as her fingertips slid towards his wrist. The rogue took a half step back, putting him outside the range of her deadly digits, and swiped at her face. The young woman leaned back, while angling her right hand towards his elbow. Kabuto twitched again, narrowly missing her eyes and saving his arm. As I thought, Orochimaru's lieutenant affirmed his expectations. Now try this. He dismissed the blades in his left hand, and stepped back into her range, throwing a hard left cross at her nose. Hinata's fingers darted up, sealing the chakra points in his forearm and scoring minor cut in the accompanying muscle, but that didn't slow his punch. The pale beauty recognized the fact as well, and crossed her arms under his wrist, using both of her limbs to push his attack over her head. Now, Kabuto tripled the length of the blades in his right hand, and aimed them at her heart. He knew her arms were too far out of position to stop him, nor could she use a leg block in time. He looked up at her face, wanting to relish her fear as she realized it was over. But there was no such look in her eyes. Rotation, Hinata incanted, chakra spilling out of her body as she spun. The dome of energy struck Kabuto mere moments before his blades would have met her Shozaku. The 8 trigrams palm's heavenly spin lifted him slightly into the air, and cast him away from the girl. Right, Kabuto grunted as he picked himself up, his left temple bleeding slightly from where it struck the rocky ground. I didn't think she used that so fast or so close. Hinata did not wait for him to recover or plan this time. She drew up her power, signing rapidly to give it form. Ushi, I, Inu, Yu, Hitsuji, Byakuganot, Primordial Chakra Jutsu. She slammed her right fist into the rocky ground, joining her chakra with the natural energy in the stones. It raced across the distance between them, and exploded into Kabuto's body. The chakra surged through his network, blasting back out of his weakest tenketsu. The combined ki surged free, taking some of his own power with it. In the end, she saw that 67 of his chakra points were disabled, mostly in his extremities, but also 3 critical junctions in his stomach. What did you do to me? He grimaced. Kabuto tried to form chakra scalpels again, but the damage to his arms was too great, and the energy would not coalesce. Using my Kekkei Genkai, I can merge my own earth chakra, with the natural power the rock and dirt around us, and then send it into your system, she explained. The energy forces its way back out, and the impact on your chakra network is similar to the 8 trigrams 64 palms. Keyline Jutsu, the renegade attempted the healing technique again, but like the scalpels, his chakra was too unstable to form the jutsu. Another advantage of the chakra pulse, Hinata decided, recalling her earlier comparison of the maneuvers. Surrender, please, she requested gently. Kabuto's face twisted in anger, and he threw a set of shurikens at her before drawing a kunai in each hand. As he charged her, he also slipped a food pill into his mouth and bit down on it. Hinata avoided or blocked the throwing stars, and then braced herself to receive him. I don't need your pity, Yakushi growled, swinging his left-hand blade at her shoulder, in an underhand grip. She caught his wrist with ginmaki, and sent a sliver of lightning chakra into the coat, shocking his arm. The limb twitched as he withdrew it, and at the same time the medic stabbed at her stomach with his right knife. That hypocritical mercy is part of what makes the leaf so weak, he snarled as she slid around his attack. Hinata frowned at him. The Hidden Leaf Village is not weak, she argued. We have withstood everything all of your masters could throw at us, and have not only survived but flourished. Orochimaru is a scavenger, and the Akatsuki are broken and running, because they underestimated us. Just as you have underestimated me, she added sadly. His eyes went wider, as he lost control. His attempts to cut and skewer her became wild and undisciplined, and she dodged them with ease. Good. Kabuto watched her, his berserk attacks a new gambit. He probed his chakra network with the extra energy from the pill, trying to determine which jutsu he might be able to perform despite his injuries. No, I can't perform the shark bomb jutsu, not without that tenketsu in my leg, he thought, or the headhunter. But that just might work. He swung aggressively, incidentally scoring a wide, shallow cut on the back of his right arm when he missed. Kabuto waited as the life fluid covered his wrist, and pulled slightly in his hand. Once he had enough, he turned the kunai in left hand back over into a proper, overhand grip, and stabbed both weapons at her. The attack was controlled and precise, and was the focus for his true strike. Medical arts, blood flow jutsu. Like so many of his skills, Kabuto had corrupted the healing technique into something deadly. The blood flow jutsu required physical contact with the target's life fluid, and then took control of it. Most ninja doctors used it to direct the flow of blood away from injured areas to prevent the patient from bleeding out. Advanced users like Tsunade and Kabuto could even use the jutsu to temporarily bridge the break in damaged veins and arteries. Yakushi had also learned he could use it to stab or hit opponents with extensions of his own blood. The liquid flowed over his blades, expanding and rapidly shooting towards Hinata in the form of a broad-bladed spear. She was moving closer when he activated the technique, and did not have time to dodge. Kabuto grinned, believing he had caught the perceptive woman off guard. But as the blade started to cut into her uniform, Hinata reached up and gently pressed her hand to Kabuto's heart. All of the chakra points around his cardiac muscle slammed shut, and his jutsu collapsed. Kabuto felt pain spreading up his replacement arm as his heartbeat grew shallow and irregular. Hinata stepped back, as he fell to his knees. Is this supposed to be poetic justice? He gasped angrily, killing me the way I saved you. You don't have to die, she offered, just promise to give up and turn yourself in. No, Kabuto grinned viciously, I'd rather make you live with the knowledge you killed someone who saved your life. You didn't save my life. There was a touch of harshness in her reply. I was just a way for you to make a point. She watched, as Kabuto's body fell the rest of the way to the dirt. Then she knelt next to him with an unhappy expression. If you are truly dead, I apologize for this desecration, she said to his back, but given your guile and medical expertise, I need to be certain. She summoned the electrical blade of Ginmaki, and gently slid it between his fourth and fifth ribs, slicing his heart in half. Reassured of his death, and praying the gods would forgive her, she turned her attention to the fiery barrier, and the undead shinobi who was maintaining it. The demon cat sniffed the body suspiciously, but appeared satisfied. She joined Hinata, briefly rubbing the human's leg comfortingly, before glaring darkly at the unnatural being holding them. Sakura swung her blade with both hands, and Jirobo barely avoided losing a leg. Kidomaru sent a line of silk onto the flat head of her axe, hoping to disarm her, but instead he was almost dragged into range of her weapon before he released the cord. The spider-like shinobi had been off balance since having two of his arms cut off, and though getting one back helped, it did not completely fix the problem. The medic figured out the two-fold plan to stall. First, their new bodies did not grow tired, or at least did so at a greatly diminished rate. And they had her outnumbered. So they were trying to exhaust her, until they could attack without fear of dismemberment. In addition, Sakura's quick glances told her that Sol and Lune were in trouble. If Tayuya could eliminate the squirrels, whether by killing them or by forcing them to reverse the summons themselves, she could rejoin the fight against the Leaf Jonin. And Jirobo and Kidomaru knew that the longer they avoided the axe wielder, the more likely it was they would get their teammates' help. The flutist began to play her instrument again, and both rodents first started to stand on end. The ninja animals both lashed out, trying to force the instrument away from her lips, but the sound kunoiki avoided their strikes. As her ninjutsu began to fully develop, the squirrels' faces took on looks of pain. Sakura wondered if she could take the time to help them. Wait, that's it, Sakura realized. She signaled the rodents, and Sol managed a slight nod. The medic then faced her opponents, and threw her axe sidearm at Jirobo's wide stomach. We won't fall for that again, Kidomaru hissed, shooting multiple webs at the heavy weapon. As he did, Sol grabbed onto her brother, and Sakura placed her hands together. In twin bursts of dust and energy, Haruno substituted herself for the willing squirrels. Weapon summoning, she declared again, bringing the axe back to her hand. She ignored the pain of the semi-visible lightning crackling around her, and leaped towards the musician ninja, swinging her weapon overhead with both hands. Suten, slicing waves jutsu, she added a line of water chakra to the edge of the axe, making it sharper than usual and reducing the air resistance. Tayuya just smirked and raised her flute to block. But unlike the squirrel's light blades, Sakura's weapon cleaved through the reinforced woodwind without even slowing. In that instant, the undead woman's eyes widened in terror. As I thought, Sakura smiled as the axe met Tayuya's skull. She wasn't able to pay attention to us, thanks to Sol and Lune. The blade split the sound ninja in half almost perfectly, from the top of her head down to her crotch. As she fell apart, Sakura saw a fading mass of blue and red sparks in the brain of the victim of Tayuya's resurrection. The gray flesh began to melt, turning into a mass of carbon-blackened water, revealing the body of a young girl. She had been no more than 10 years old when Orochimaru had sacrificed her for the jutsu. Sakura felt only a small comfort in knowing that the girl had been dead for weeks or even months. Her soft tissues had been tinted the same creepy shade that Tayuya's skin had been, but unlike the semi-organic shell that had given the reborn renegade her former appearance, the girl's original skin and organs did not dissolve. Sakura turned back to her male opponents with a look of disgust. You sacrifice children to return from the dead, she snarled angrily, as the squirrels regrouped on either side of her. Both of the warriors looked more nervous, at her rage and her discovery of another way to destroy their supposedly indestructible bodies. What's the plan? Lune asked darkly, the sibling rodents regarding the unnatural humans with revulsion. Sakura looked him over. Both of the animals were more than slightly injured, but they were still ready to help her. Simple, she answered loudly, making sure their opponents could hear her. I get to the fat guy, and throw him at the one maintaining the barrier. If a con opens a hole the barrier, Jirobo hits him, and the whole thing goes down. If he doesn't, Jirobo burns. Then the three of us can take out the spider. And what do we do? Lune prompted. Kidomaru, the spider guy, will try to intercept me. Can you two keep him off my back? Yes, Sol agreed sternly. Lune nodded his assent. Thanks, I'll heal you two later, the human whispered, so just stay safe. Sakura didn't wait an instant more, she ran straight towards the large shinobi, depositing her axe back into the scroll as she ran. The albino squirrel drew both of her weapons again, and scrambled after Kidomaru. After a moment of strategic hesitation, the black rodent followed. The two revived warriors paused, not sure if the plan they had been privy to was real, or a trap like they had used. But as Sol reached Kidomaru, his trained instincts took over, and he spit a glob of his silk at her. Faster than he expected, the squirrel dodged his attack. She drew closer, and he expectorated again, this time a knife-shaped projectile instead of a sticky ball. She avoided again, and was close enough to leap at his stomach. His hands dropped to intercept the rodent, when her brother appeared from behind her, stabbing his sword at the spider's face. Ninja art, Shadow Squirrel Kinjutsu, Lune proclaimed, jamming the slender blade into Kidomaru's mouth. Still trying to catch the fleeing Jirobo, Sakura could not help but groan at the pun. I didn't think I could get this into your brain pan, the male rodent crowed triumphantly, leaving his weapon behind as he sprang away, but let's see you spit that stuff at us now. He doesn't have to use saliva, the leaf Jonan shouted in warning, it's just most plentiful and easy to control. He can also use his sweat. Kidomaru caught Lune in the air, his fingertips adhering to the squirrel's fur. He slammed the summoned rodent into the ground, trying to crush his torso. Sol moved back in, and her first slice bounced off the hardened silk. But her second and third strikes sheared through Lune's fur and the skin of Kidomaru's digits, freeing her brother. Jirobo stopped his heedless retreat, and turned to face Sakura. His face was shadowed in rage. No more running away, he grimaced, I don't care what Lord Orochimaru does to me, I'm just going to kill you now. If he expected her to be frightened, Jirobo was sorely mistaken. Sakura snorted and smirked at him. She pulled her gloves tight again, and shook out her arm where her uniform was binding around her shoulder a little. I arm wrestle Choji from time to time, she shot back, and I usually win. You remember Choji, don't you? The guy who overpowered and killed you the first time. You're bluffing, Jirobo countered. You've taken my hits, she shook her head, which do you think is more likely, that I am stronger than Choji, or that you are going to betray Orochimaru? He took half a step back, and then started running again. Thank you, Kakashi-sensei, Ina Sakura trumpeted, overjoyed that her partial deception worked. She followed him closely, waiting until he was in the perfect position. The kunoichi put an extra burst of power into her legs, and sprang forward twice, landing in front of Jirobo. He quickly recovered, throwing a heavy fist at her throat. She caught it, turned his arm over, and then kicked him in the ribs. He flinched, not from the pain he did not feel, but from recognizing he had made a mistake. She smiled at him, almost sweetly. Then she pulled him in, and spun around. As she promised, she released him so that he was tumbling through the air straight towards Akon. Jirobo's eyes fell on his teammate, pleading. But Akon just smirked back and shrugged. The giant struck the barrier, and the crimson flames began to engulf his body with incredible haste. Sakura barely had time to take a breath before he was gone. She buried her sadness for the innocent host, and offered Akon a triumphant grin. The normally superordinate twin simply glared back, uncaring. When Sakura turned to face Kidomaru, the already gray shinobi blanched. He had already removed and destroyed Lune's sword, but had been unable to hit the agile squirrels. Now he saw his second death approaching in the form of an ill-tempered, under-endowed, but undeniably powerful kunoichi. He spit a yellow, silken kunai into each of his 5 hands and waited for her. He swallowed his fear and met her eyes. Sakura nodded with a hint of respect, and summoned her axe again. Stay back, she advised the squirrels. Sol and Lune moved away, but the sister handed her brother one of her swords, and neither of Hinata's familiars relaxed. As if on a mutually recognized signal, Sakura and Kidomaru charged each other. Sakura swung her blade horizontally, but he caught it on 4 of his daggers. One cracked, and the spider was pushed aside, but he still managed to stab his remaining knife at her throat. She let go with her right hand, and caught his wrist, but without the leverage, his other 4 arms were able to force her weapon down towards the ground. She sprang back before he could capitalize, resetting to the correct grip. The sound ninja discarded the damaged weapon, but did not create a new one. Instead, he threw the matching blade on his other side at her. The medic deflected the attack with ease, and he charged in, striking at 3 different points with his remaining blades, while he started the sign with his newly freed hands. Sakura stepped in closer, blocking one of his attacks, while allowing the other 2 to land light cuts on her right elbow and left cheek. In return, she swung her axe upwards, taking his bottom right arm off, and cutting into the bicep of his middle limb before he was able to shift his body, narrowly keeping the damaged appendage. She kicked the loose limb at Akon, who opened the barrier and was able to duck under the smaller projectile. His jutsu disrupted and his numeric advantage decreased. Kidomaru launched his 2 kunai at her, and hopped back, forming a bow again. He pointed it at the observing squirrels, hoping to distract Sakura. But Tsunad's apprentice closed in again, spoiling his aim and allowing both of the animal ninjas to evade the arrows. She had him back nearly into the corner, when he remembered her earlier stratagem, about forcing him to escape and following him through the hole. Akon, do not lower the Shishinjin, Kidomaru requested. Lord Orochimaru can restore me again, if that is his wish. But we cannot allow his prize to escape. The barrier creator nodded, and Kidomaru hopped backwards into the flames. Hinata walked over to Saken, observing him, and the seal he sat upon, through the barrier of red-purple flames. Nieni followed her closely, wrinkling her nose at the undead shinobi in disgust. Ra-ow, she vocalized. He was brought back from the dead by Orochimaru's kinjutsu, the human explained vocally to the cat, he is neither alive, nor dead. And based on what I saw from Sakura's battle, a child was sacrificed to resurrect him. The demon's eyes narrowed, and she hissed at him. You killed Kabuto, but you are still trapped, the leader of the sound form mocked her. Do you think this fire can stop the 2-tails cat? Hinata asked carefully. I don't know, but it would be worth seeing. It is an affront to the gods and nature, Nieni sent to her sealer, there should be an accounting. Hinata agreed, but did not broadcast it vocally or mentally. Instead she brought forth one of the treated scrolls she carried in response to Naruto's fear of ghosts. She sat down, and inscribed a moderately advanced seal upon the paper. Tori, Ne, Uma, Tora, she intoned, Fuinjutsu, fire seal. A mist rose from the circle in the center of the scroll, and began to draw in the flames of the Shishinjin. Saken's eyes widened in surprise. He pushed his hands together more firmly, and sent more energy into the barrier. Hinata downgraded her Byakugan to the basic level, and then closed her eyes, sending more power and focus into her seal as well. The mat Saken was sitting on began to grow warm, and despite his best effort, the magenta and crimson flames were pulled into Hinata's seal. Orochimaru frowned angrily, but Manda's green eyes brightened evilly, and his mouth twisted in a reptilian smirk. Gamabunta, the giant serpent hissed with a dark pleasure, I was afraid I would never get to see you again. I remember what that knife of yours did to me, the last time we met. The snake's tongue flickered over the roof of his mouth, where Tsunade had impaled him with the tanto the size of a small building. Bunta drew the dagger in question, and Manda's eyes traced the edge of the blade. I still owe you for that. And this time you don't have Katsuyu or her contractor to protect you, the reptile coiled to lunge. You mean they aren't here to get in my way this time, the chief toad countered. He hunched down lower, gathering the strength in his legs. Both of the giant animals sprang at the same time, and Gamabunta blocked Manda's fangs with his knife. Then the amphibian's right leg kicked out again, catching the snake a third of the way down his length. There was a cracking sound under the toad's foot, but Naruto could not tell if it was bone, or just scales. But the blonde human did not have time to examine that. Fire style, Phoenix Flower Jutsu, Orochimaru began to blow multiple small fireballs at Naruto and Bunta. Fuyuten, Cyclone Spikes Barrage. Naruto countered with his upgraded version of the wind darts. He shot one green dart into each of the flames, bursting them but also destroying the spike in the process. If Mom could do it, so can I. Naruto remembered the first story he had heard of Yukihana, and incanted, Doton, Stone Claws Jutsu. He poured extra chakra into the technique, and the claws that emerged were larger, longer, and sturdier than usual. They latched onto the giant snake, and held Manda down. Raiten, Sparkling Coat Jutsu, Orochimaru sent an electrical charge over Manda's scales, shocking, bunter where the toad was trying to shoulder the snake the rest of the way to the ground. Raiten, Stonecracker Jutsu, the Sannin piggybacked the energy of the sparkling coat, and sent more lightning down to destroy the stone claws. Manda extended his body higher for another strike, while the chief toad shook out his right arm where it had been burned. The serpent's fangs darted in again, and Gamabunta brought up his tanto one-handed, deflecting the snake rather than stopping him. As the constrictor passed, Naruto saw some sort of thick gel glistening on his teeth. What's on his fangs? Naruto asked his ally. Venom envy, Bunter answered. Since he can't produce his own poison, he has started taking the poison of other members of the snake clan, and coating his fangs with it. He hopped up, and kicked out again, but the snake twisted out of the way, and then wrapped the toad's extended leg with the tip of his tail. Fuyuten, Tornado Lance Jutsu, Naruto quickly summoned up the larger wind projectile, and threw it into the coil around Gamabunta's lower limb, forcing the snake to let go before he could crush the appendage. Orochimaru, Manda hissed carefully, I think if you can get the boy away from Gamabunta, I would be better able to fight the toad. The Sannin considered that. He had wasted a great deal of chakra on the Five Souls Underworld connection and had taken a few hits from Haku. Orochimaru had not felt he had a sure win against Uzumaki in his current state, which was why he summoned Manda. And, of course, teleporting the giant serpent had taken even more energy. On the other hand, Naruto had used some of his power to summon the amphibian, and Manda had a point. If he could tie up Naruto for a few minutes, and the snake could defeat or drive off the toad, then it would be back to 2-on-1 in his favor. I suppose there is merit to your suggestion, the renegade agreed softly. He looked down to where Kusanagi stood in the ground, and gestured with one finger. The straight blade tore free of the dirt, and flew back to his hand. Manda rose up, giving Sasuke's stolen body a higher platform from which to jump at Naruto. Orochimaru dove towards the blonde youth, sword first. Uzumaki drew Kitsune and blocked the Chokuto with the staff blade. Though the Tokujo had the advantage in weight, the Sannin had enough momentum to push him back off Bunter's skull. As they fell towards the packed earth, Orochimaru slashed out once more, and steel rang against steel when Naruto caught the blow again. I've heard rumors about your little stick, Orochimaru noted. I'm curious to see how it compares to a real weapon. Naruto did not respond with words, he simply swung Kitsune overhand at his rival's shoulder. The Sharingan read the attack easily, and the thin sword intercepted the attack. Now that the mammals are out of the way, where were we? The huge reptile asked. He plunged forward again, but this time the snake kept his mouth closed and aimed for Gamabunta's left side, while the toad's tanto was on his right. He clipped the amphibian's left elbow, and rolled away as Bunter's knife sliced lightly into his scales. As he dodged, Manda transferred his momentum to his tail, aiming it at the amphibian's chin. Gamabunta hopped over the attack, turning as he did to keep tracking the snake. At the apex of his leap, his tongue lashed out at Manda's head. The metal studs on his flycatcher tore through the scales and flesh above the snake's left eye. Blood poured over the orb, concealing the chief from his view. Manda continued to roll to the side, which was the only thing that saved him from being beheaded the descending dagger. Bunter still clipped him, and the snake hissed angrily as he wrapped his body to face the toad again. Gamabunta gathered himself too, favoring his right leg despite Naruto's intercession. The body thief stepped back twice, and then swung Kusanagi at the teen. The attack appeared to be too shallow to possibly hit, but as the tip of the Chokuto passed Kitsune's cylinder, the grass cutter suddenly grew longer, shooting towards Naruto's heart. Uzumaki sent a line of chakra into the staff blade, creating the wind sword. The instantaneous appearance of the wider, green extension knocked Orochimaru's weapon wide. Naruto pushed the legendary sword further away, and closed the distance while creating a Rasengan in his left hand. He pushed the sphere towards Sasuke's right elbow, while trying to slide Kitsune back towards his opponent. Orochimaru appeared to have a choice: withdraw his arm and get cut by the altered staff blade, or keep their weapons locked and take the hit from the spiraling sphere. Instead, he released Kusanagi, sending chakra to the sword to control it remotely. At the same time, he yanked his arm back, hopping away from Minato's jutsu. Orochimaru gestured once he was safe, and the grass cutter pulled back, and then swooped in for another strike. Uzumaki parried, and was surprised by the strength in the flying sword's attack. The Chokuto danced back again, and then stabbed at Naruto's belly. The teen quickly sidestepped, but was not fast enough to avoid a deep cut to his left side, which quickly closed. That's right, I nearly forgot, Orochimaru nodded, Kabuto's most useful contribution. He called the sword back to him, signing as it reached him. He touched his glowing fingers to the blade's crosspiece, imparting a sickly sheen along its edges. Ninja art, medical arrest jutsu, the snake summoner grinned at his would-be guinea pig. Then he flicked out Kusanagi, and the sword flew at the blonde shinobi again. Naruto raised Kitsune to block, but instead of a powerful, lethal stroke, the floating weapon turned suddenly, and scored a light cut on Naruto's thigh. This time, the wound did not close. The teen's eyes flickered to his leg in confusion, and then narrowed in memory. Is that the jutsu Kabuto imprinted on his scalpels? The Leaf Warrior queried, the one that stopped my wounds from regenerating. Sasuke's controlled mouth twisted into a smirk, and Orochimaru did not say anything, he just spun the grass cutter back at Uzumaki again. Gamabunta fired a stream of oil at Manda, and the snake twisted higher so only his lower half was covered. Then he flicked out his tail derisively, sending most of the incendiary liquid into Yukin's Shishinjin, where it exploded on impact. Your little trick doesn't do any good without a human to light it for you, Manda mocked, slithering forward again, watching the toad's blade carefully with his unimpeded eye. Bunta spit again, this time firing a tight stream of pure water at his old enemy. The serpent was able to spin around the initial strike, and then darted forward, covering the rest of the gap before the amphibian could adjust his aim. From his position, Gamabunta could not bring his blade up to fully block, so he hopped upwards, swinging the dagger loosely at the snake's open jaws. His attack was too weak, and Manda powered past it, one of his fangs scraping down the toad's side. Bunta tried to recover, to bring the edge of the tanto back down into the reptile's spine, but the burning in his shoulder and back slowed him, and before he could line up his blow, Manda's tail slapped into his left eye, and the snake disappeared behind him. The chief toad spun around to prevent Manda from attacking him from behind, but as he landed, he was panting heavily. An eye for an eye, a cut for a cut, the serpent informed him, except my cuts have something extra. You called it envy, but it took careful and deliberate training to make sure I did not poison myself. Gamabunta tried to leap high above the snake, planning to bring his knife down with his weight behind it. But his right leg did not obey his command, and he hopped up unevenly. When he was at eye level, Manda's head flashed out, knocking the dagger out of the toad's hand. The giant blade sheared through a tree before clattering onto the loam at the edge of the forest. As Bunta came down, Manda coiled around the amphibian, and started to crush him. This is the end, Manda taunted. Gamabunta grimaced and lashed out with his tongue again. The weak attack dislodged some of the scales under Manda's jaw, but did not break the skin. Still, the snake's eyes flared angrily, and he sank both of his fangs into the toad. Bunta shuddered, and his resistance vanished. Still, the snake kept constricting his prey until the sound of snapping bones could be heard. Both of the humans looked over at their familiars, as the serpent released the amphibian. Chief, Naruto cried out, and ran over to the toad, why didn't you cancel the summons and escape? I'm no coward, Gamabunta wheezed, and besides, I couldn't leave one of my loyal servants hanging out to dry. The toad's chest heaved once more, and as his breath left his lungs, the light went out of his eyes. I suppose I owe you thanks, Orochimaru, Manda rumbled happily, for allowing me to end that stupid frog's life. Now, I believe you wanted help capturing the boy. Naruto turned to face them, tears flying away from his blue eyes. Except that instead of round, his pupils were now slitted. His teeth and ears started to elongate, and silver chakra sparked visibly over the whisker marks on his cheeks. Uzumaki snarled as he met the snake's gaze. Manda drew back slightly, mostly from surprise, but also from a sliver of worry. No, not me. Naruto took a harsh breath, forcing back the ascendant fox form. All bark and no bite, little fox. The serpent mocked, recovering from his shock. Naruto did not flinch, instead he summoned two shadow clones. The trio started running towards Manda, and the original started signing. The snake watched him, curious and amused. Is that what I think it is? Orochimaru collected Kusanagi and moved back. Even with 2 sets of chakra, he was running low on power from his efforts. So he cleared room to watch his familiar work. What is the boy planning? The Sannin pondered. As Naruto drew close, the clones sprinted ahead. One copy hopped towards the other, who caught the first duplicate's foot. He pushed up, and the other jumped, combining their strength to propel the leaper higher. Still signing, Naruto copied the move, and when he reached the airborne clone, the second facsimile caught his leg and threw him above the snake's head. As Naruto started to fall, he completed the jutsu, and a light blue seal spread out from his right hand. Fuinjutsu, he roared, slamming his palm into Manda's skull, imprinting the crest on Snake's skin, summoning seal. In deference to Hinata's recent accomplishment, Kakashi said, I thought we would spend this morning working on Fuinjutsu. Hinata colored slightly, and Naruto rubbed the back of his head nervously. Then the blonde Chunin thought of something, and frowned at his teacher. But Kakashi-sensei, he complained, Fuinjutsu aren't part of the Jonin trials, right? It's ninjutsu, genjutsu, taijutsu, weapons, and skills. So why work on seals now? Kakashi smiled under his mask, moderately impressed by his normally dense student's insight. Though it depends on who you ask, many ninjas consider sealing techniques to be a subset of ninjutsu, like shape-shifting techniques, the Jonin explained. Whether you agree with that personally or not, the conclave places Fuinjutsu in the ninjutsu category for testing. That way, sealing experts can still use their skills to help get the promotion, but it is not necessary to add a sixth test and make everyone learn a number of advanced seals. Sakura nodded appreciatively. So where are we gonna start? Naruto asked, mollified. I believe we will start with the summoning seal jutsu, their teacher answered. It is a fairly simple C-rank seal, if not particularly useful. Why not? Sakura asked. It sounds like it blocks summoning contracts. It does. Kakashi dipped his head once in agreement. While it is active, no contracted animal or spirit can be summoned to or from the area. The problem is that the area blocked is fairly small compared to the amount of chakra it takes, and it doesn't prevent a summoned familiar from physically entering or leaving the area. As a result, it is most often used as a permanent seal, not as a combat technique. For example, the snake hissed angrily, and shook his head. Naruto did not cling with his chakra, instead he let himself be thrown clear. The two clones caught him, and then disappeared as Naruto retreated further, signing again. What is this? Manda could not see what on his skull. Orochimaru looked marginally impressed. Rather ingenious use of that technique, he murmured, getting ready to attack the distracted youth, putting it on Manda directly, so he cannot leave the area of the seal. But why would he want to prevent Manda from escaping? Naruto finished his hand motions, and swiping his hand down his arms, covering both of them with the red liquid that was still slowly leaking from the minor cuts Orochimaru had inflicted. He then slammed both his palms into the ground, stamping two handprints of blood onto the earth. Summoning art, Toad Battalion Jutsu. Uzumaki roared. The eyes of both the snake and the reptile he had summoned widened, as the space around Naruto was saturated by a series of rapid explosions. The boy was briefly hidden by the mass of smoke. Gamakichi and Gamatatsu were the first to appear, and were closest to Naruto. Beyond them he saw the larger forms of Gameiken, Gamahiro, and Gamazashi. He recalled Jiraiya introducing him the foot-long, white-haired, green-skinned toad who stood two-legged on Gameiken's shoulder, but did not recall the elder's name. The only other amphibian he recognized was Gamauno, a 4-foot-tall, bipedal toad whom Jiraiya had summoned during Naruto's training as a taijutsu sparring partner for the boy. Most of the 50 ninja toads were unknown to Uzumaki, but all turned to face him. Apprentice, why have you summoned us? The old toad called out to him, his eyes flickering from Manda to Gamabunta. Naruto suddenly remembered his name was Fukasaku. Manda killed Gamabunta, the human answered simply and darkly. I put a summoning seal on him, so he can't run away. I was going to kill him myself, he added, but then I figured you guys would want the chance. 50 pairs of amphibian eyes turned to regard the snake in unison. Rightly so, Fukasaku agreed angrily. Just so you know, Naruto announced, panting slightly from the physical effort of summoning so many toads with a single jutsu, his fangs are covered in poison, that's how he got the best of the chief. And, 'cause of the seal, any of you guys that get within about 200 feet of his head won't be able to escape either. Thanks for the warnings. Zashi drew 2 of her 5 swords. Can we kill the snake now? Yes. Fukasaku nodded, grinning slightly as he referenced Naruto's new technique, Toad Battalion, attack. Gamma Hero drew one of his long swords, and both of the weapon user amphibians bounded at the snake. Manda refused to flinch, and caught Hero's katana on his fangs, while twisting his body so Gamazashi's shorter blades only scored shallow cuts in him. The rest of the Toad clan began to spread out around their target, both to prevent the reptile from running, and to prepare their own attacks. What? Aren't you gonna help? Kichi chided, having caught the hidden meaning in Naruto's tone and words. I don't have the right, Naruto admitted, it's my fault the chief was killed. The summoning contract serves both sides, the orange amphibian countered, but more than that, Pops thought of you as part of the family. A deformed, numbskull cousin maybe, but still family. He wouldn't blame you, and we don't either. Now I have an idea, but I'll need your help. Gamakichi's eyes flickered to the edge of the forest, and Uzumaki followed his gaze. You in? Sure, Naruto noted with a thankful grin. Then his expression darkened slightly, and he continued, I remember the chief always wanted a snakeskin wallet, but how about we send him off with a snakeskin shroud, instead? Sounds good to me, Gamabunta's son agreed. Orochimaru drew further back in the woods, all thoughts of ambushing Naruto gone. Part of him knew he should simply escape, but morbid curiosity rooted him in place, watching Manda's slow destruction. Besides, his voice projected into the cage holding Sasuke's soul, there are still the others to consider. Hinata was too much for poor diminished Kabuto, and I saw Sakura destroy Tayuya, but the other two might still capture your would-be girlfriend. The trapped teen glared up at his possessor helplessly. Gamatatsu lead a quartet of horse-sized amphibians behind Manda, and proceed in unison to spray oil across the constrictor's tail. Then, Tatsu took out a set of flint and steel, and sparked it just above the trail along the ground. The snake flicked his back half, dislodging the fuel while also dodging Gamaken's team's attempt to spray his midsection. But the combustible still caught fire, as did the remnants of Gamabunta's attack. Manda rolled over, attempting to crash Gamauno's squad, while at the same time smothering the flames. The toad oil was mostly extinguished, however the move put him in the path of Gamazashi's scissored blades. As the twin Wakazashi bit into his scales, the tyrant of the summoned snakes spun his tail around, bashing the female toad's head, and incidentally saving himself. But at the same time, both Ono and Ken struck. The martial artist's kick, powerful despite his size, held the constrictor down long enough for the swordsman's blade to cleave into Manda's spine, 2/3 of the way back from his head. Manda snarled in pain, and whipped his body into a tight spiral to protect himself. But as he did, something else caught his good eye. Both of his green orbs widened in surprise and fear, as Gamabunta picked up his knife, and turned to face the snake. The serpent glanced over at where the toad had fallen, and the body was gone. You are dead, the snake hissed, and Orochimaru could not help but chuckle at the snake's confusion. The chief toad did not say anything. He just lifted his tanto and leaped forward. Manda started to dodge, but streams of water and oil from the toad surrounding him put him off balance, and Bunta only had to alter his aim slightly to plunge his dagger into the serpent's brain. How? Manda's breath rattled harshly as his soul's seat failed. The last thing he saw was Gamabunta exploding. The transformation ended, and Gamakichi and Naruto were left standing on the hilt of the tanto, while over 100 Uzumaki clones fell away, dismissing themselves as they dropped. On the other side of the dead snake, light seemed to twist, and the real Chief Toad reappeared, Fukasaku now standing on his head. Well done, children, the amphibian elder offered sadly. Take his skin, Kichi shouted, leave the rest to rot. The other toads moved to comply, and Naruto and Gamakichi jumped down, and crossed the distance to the Chief Toad's body. As he did, Uzumaki remembered his teammates. He offered a quick apology, and diverted towards the Shishinjin cages. The barrier containing Hinata was growing very thin, nearly gone at the top, while Sakura's was still intact. A bizarre smell hit his nose, and he realized the mat Saken was sitting on was burning. Hinata had nearly finished draining the flames, and the Sound 4 leader shifted slightly as he prepared to attack her. He abandoned the barrier, preparing to use his parasite demon attack on her. But his plan was brutally interrupted. Rasengan, Naruto intoned, shoving the spiraling sphere into Saken's back. The undead warrior growled and turned to glare at Uzumaki. Naruto, his head, Hinata prompted, having seen Sakura's defeat of Tayuya, and now looking at the aberrant chakra formation in Saken's brain. Naruto continued to hold the first Rasengan in place, preventing the Sound Ninja's body from repairing itself, and created a second orb in his left. Sakan attempted to pull away, keeping his eyes on Naruto. Hinata's Rasengan hit the back of Sakan's head, and the Sound Shinobi froze. Naruto used the chance to push his second jutsu into Sakan's brow. The two spheres merged, expanding and destroying the basis of his resurrection. Naruto and Hinata ended their jutsu at once, and Uzumaki glanced over his fiancée. Are you okay? He asked, despite her general lack of injuries. I'm fine, thanks to Ni, she indicated the tiny demon next to her. Thanks, Ni, Naruto told the cat warily, and the two tails mewed happily. Can you get Sakura out? He turned his attention to the last cage. I don't know if I have enough chakra to use the fire seal again, she admitted sadly. Then she gave him a shy yet coy look, and asked, can you help me? I'm a little drained, but I think together we can manage, he answered, taking her hand. Can you two quit flirting and get me out of here? Sakura's voice was distorted as she joined them on the other side of the barrier. Sol and Lune loped behind her, their injuries having been erased by the medic. Yukon's eyes darted between the two set of enemies, worried. Enough of this, Orochimaru noted to himself, still watching from the edge of the forest, and activated the contingency jutsu. Inside the smaller Shishinjin compartment, Yukon's body suddenly shook, and rapidly dissolved into a pool of acid. The solvent destroyed the scroll, and scarred the stone underneath. As the barrier jutsu disappeared, Sasuke's body vanished into the forest. Naruto, I am so sorry, Hinata clung to his arm, tears streaming down her face, as the three humans, two squirrels, and one demon cat approached Gamabunta's still form. As Uzumaki has suggested, the ninja toads were wrapping their chief's body in a purple veil with occasional black stripes. Naruto noticed they had returned Bunta's dagger to its scabbard. As they finished, the summoned amphibians began to return to their sanctuary in puffs of chakra. Gamazashi caught Naruto's eye before she left, and nodded to him. Finally, only Fukasaku, Gamakichi, and Gamatasu were left. The food-obsessed toad stared at Naruto hard, before he too vanished. The elder hopped back onto Gamabunta's skull, and pressed his hands together. The next instant, both he and the chief were gone. Hey, Naruto, Gamakichi addressed his friend, a catch in his voice, why don't you summon me again in a few days, okay? Sure. Naruto's wiped something out of his eye, but what for? So I can give you the details on Pop's funeral. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.